The early 1960s marked a cultural watershed in global industry. On one side stood the titans of mass production, embodied by the Ford Motor Company. Operating under the iron will of Henry Ford II, the Deuce, the company was an economic powerhouse, but one increasingly lacking the vital currency of prestige. Ford desperately needed a modern, performance-oriented identity to shed the image of the conservative, family sedan maker and compete with Chevrolet's burgeoning Corvette fame. On the other side of the Atlantic, in the ancient city of Maranello, Italy, resided a different kind of giant, Enzo Ferrari. He was an octogenarian patriarch, a shrewd businessman, and the de facto emperor of sports car racing. His Scuderia Ferrari was synonymous with danger, speed, and, most crucially, an unparalleled winning streak at the 24 Hours of Le Mans, holding the title from 1960 through 1965. This gap in global prestige led Henry Ford II to initiate one of the most intriguing and consequential corporate acquisition attempts in history. In early 1963, Ford approached Ferrari with an offer to buy the company outright. The initial proposition was a win-win. Ford would acquire instant racing credibility and world-class engine design, while Ferrari would gain access to the infinite capital and mass production techniques needed to expand its road car operations, which were often cash-strapped due to the expense of maintaining a dominant racing team. The negotiations were meticulous, involving layers of executives, accountants, and lawyers traveling discreetly between Dearborn, Michigan, and Maranello. The final deal was reportedly worth close to $18 million, a staggering sum at the time, and the consensus was that the sale was imminent. However, the devil, as always, was in the details, specifically in Clause 6 of the agreement. This clause dictated the operational control of the Scuderia Ferrari. Ford's terms stipulated that they would control the racing budget and the final decisions regarding the team's participation in races, particularly Le Mans. For Enzo, who viewed the Scuderia not merely as a marketing tool but as the very soul of his existence, a personal tribute to the loss of his son, Dino, this was an existential threat. He could tolerate Ford controlling the production lines, but never the racing team. In a dramatic, last-minute confrontation in his Maranello office, Enzo Ferrari flatly rejected the clause. According to those present, his rejection was delivered with cold fury, possibly laced with colorful Italian expletives regarding the integrity of Ford's management. He allegedly pointed out that he was being asked to become a subsidiary of a colossal firm, and refused to cede his independence. He declared the deal off. For the senior Ford executives who had spent months brokering the deal, the retraction was shocking. But for Henry Ford II, the ultimate authority, the news was more than a setback, it was a public, international humiliation. Ferrari had dared to treat the immense Ford Motor Company like a small-time buyer, dismissing them after months of effort. The reaction from the Deuce was swift, brutal, and simple. He reportedly gathered his top racing and engineering executives, notably Lee Iacocca and Don Frey, and issued a mandate that would redefine sports car racing. Go to Le Mans. We're going to run against him. We're going to beat his ass. The instructions were unambiguous. The entire resources of the Ford empire were to be directed at the single goal of destroying Ferrari on the only stage where the Italians' prestige truly mattered. The budget was effectively black check, a rare privilege in the corporate world, illustrating the intensely personal nature of the feud. This was no longer a business venture, it was a crusade of vengeance. The war had officially begun, and the weapon would be the experimental project known simply as the GT Grand Touring. The execution of Henry Ford II's vendetta began in earnest with the formation of the GT project. Initially, Ford relied heavily on British expertise, contracting with Lola Cars and the newly formed Ford Advanced Vehicles in England. The first version, the GT40 Mark I, was a beautiful, low-slung machine, only 40 inches high, hence the name. It was aerodynamically advanced for its time, but it suffered from a crucial, fatal flaw: it was fragile. Fitted with a high-strung, small-block 4.7-liter V8 engine, the car was fast but utterly incapable of surviving 24 hours of sustained, high-speed torture. The first attempts in 1964 and 1965 at Le Mans were disastrous, ending quickly in humiliating retirements while Ferrari continued its winning streak. The immense financial investment appeared to be a catastrophic failure. It was clear that the project needed more than just money, it needed a fundamental shift in philosophy. This turning point came when Ford's management made a bold and culturally jarring decision. They brought the entire racing operation back to the United States and put it in the hands of Carroll Shelby. A living legend, Shelby was known for his blunt manner, his iconic cowboy hat, and his successful conversion of the British AC Ace into the brutal American Cobra. Shelby was tasked not just with winning, but with bringing an authentic, tough, American spirit to the project. Shelby's most pivotal hire was the man who would become the project's soul, Ken Miles. Miles was a British test driver, an uncompromising perfectionist, and a self-taught engineering genius. He saw the GT40 not as a corporate asset, but as a mechanical problem to be solved. Miles was infamous for his brutal honesty, often clashing with Ford's buttoned-down executives, earning him the reputation of an outlaw racer. But he was invaluable because he could talk to the machine. He understood exactly where and why it would break. His philosophy was simple: if it can't last, we must make it last. The core of the new approach was power. Shelby discarded the smaller, high-revving 4.7L engine and replaced it with a behemoth, the 7.0-liter, 427 cubic inch V8 engine, a cast-iron block derived from Ford's successful NASCAR program. The car became the GT40 Mark II. The challenge was immense, turning a sprint engine into an endurance engine. Miles led a grueling, almost tortuous testing regime. Engines were mounted on dynamometers and run at maximum load for continuous 24-hour cycles. Transmissions were intentionally broken multiple times until the components were engineered to withstand the stress. Cooling systems were overhauled. Miles's test reports were ruthless, forcing engineers to redesign parts until they met his uncompromising standards. The results validated the brute force approach. In early 1966, the GT40 Mark II secured major victories at the 24 Hours of Daytona and the 12 Hours of Sebring. Ken Miles co-drove the winning car in both events, putting him in a unique position to potentially achieve the Triple Crown: Daytona, Sebring, Le Mans, a feat never before accomplished by a single driver in the same year. The American Outlaw had tamed the Mark II beast, and the stage was set for the final confrontation in France. Ferrari was officially put on notice. The polite European challenge was over, and the full weight of Detroit's vengeance was about to arrive at Le Mans. June 1966. The 34th running of the 24 Hours of Le Mans was not just a motor race. It was the final, decisive battlefield of the Ford-Ferrari feud. Ford descended upon the Circuit de la Sarthe with a force never before witnessed. 8 primary GT40 Mark IIs, supported by hundreds of engineers, mechanics, and corporate brass. A logistical military operation in blue and white. Their strategy was saturation. Overwhelm the competition through sheer numbers and unrelenting pace. Ferrari countered with its stunning 330 P3 and a handful of privateer entries, banking on the elegant engineering, lighter weight, and superior handling of their cars. The race began under the traditional, chaotic, and dangerous Le Mans start procedure. The Ferrari drivers, acutely aware of the Mark II's top-end speed, immediately set a blistering, unsustainable pace. Their hope was to force the larger Ford engines to push beyond their operational limits and overheat or vibrate themselves to pieces, echoing the failures of previous years. For a few tense hours, the strategy seemed to hold. Several of the lower-priority Fords quickly retired with mechanical issues. The curse of reliability briefly flickered. However, the endurance testing done by Ken Miles and Shelby's team proved its worth. The core GT40 entries, including Miles' #1 car, absorbed the early pressure. The sheer, overwhelming power of the 7.0-liter V8s began to assert itself. On the legendary, mile-long Mulsanne straight, the Fords were achieving speeds approaching 215 miles per hour, demoralizing the Ferrari crews who could only watch the blue and white cars blast past them lap after lap. As the race transitioned into the cold, demanding darkness of the night, attrition became the ultimate weapon. The smaller, highly stressed Ferrari engines began to falter under the sustained pressure. Transmission failures, engine overheating, and clutch problems decimated the Italian lineup. By sunrise on Sunday, the shocking reality had set in. Ferrari's primary challenge was gone. Enzo Ferrari, who was reportedly keeping track from Maranello, must have felt the sting of defeat. The leaderboard told the story of American dominance. Ford GT40 Mark IIs occupied the first 3 positions. Leading the charge was the car of Ken Miles and Denny Hulme, running flawlessly. Miles, who had endured years of frustration and near misses, was now minutes away from his historic Triple Crown. The victory was assured, but the narrative was still being written in Dearborn. Leo Beebe, the head of the racing program, recognized the historical magnitude of the moment. He saw not just a win, but a publicity opportunity to deliver the final, crushing blow to Ferrari's pride. The decision was relayed. The three leading cars were to slow down and finish in a perfect, three-car formation, a symbolic dead heat that would forever be captured by the cameras. A visual manifestation of total, corporate revenge. The order to stage a three-car photo finish was a marketing masterpiece but a sporting disaster. Ken Miles, a pure racer, was deeply resistant to the directive, viewing it as a betrayal of the competitive spirit. Yet, bound by the corporate hierarchy and the promise of a collective victory, he reluctantly obeyed. He slowed his leading number 1 car, allowing the number 2 car, Bruce McLaren and Chris Amon, and the number 5 car, Bucknum and Hutcherson, to draw alongside. The three massive Mark IIs approached the finish line, forming one of the most indelible images in motorsport history. However, the moment of perfect corporate symmetry was immediately marred by an unexpected technicality rooted in ACO regulations. The rule stated that in the event of a tie, the winner was the car that had traveled the greatest distance from its starting position. Because the number 2 car, McLaren, Amon, had qualified and started a few meters further back from the start line than Miles' number 1 car, it was mathematically deemed to have traveled a fractionally greater distance during the 24 hours. Bruce McLaren and Chris Amon were declared the winners. Ken Miles, who had driven a virtually flawless race and was the undisputed leader, lost the victory and the historic Triple Crown by a technicality born of a publicity stunt. His expression, caught by photographers, was one of profound, silent disappointment, a testament to the triumph of corporate ego over athletic achievement. The victory was the most important in Ford's history. It validated Henry Ford II's uncompromising demand for vengeance and instantly transformed the company's image. Ferrari's reign at Le Mans was officially over. The GT40 went on to dominate the race for an unprecedented 4 consecutive years, 1966, 1967, 1968, and 1969, ensuring the car's legendary status and confirming the might of American engineering. The rivalry had forced both sides to innovate, elevating the standards of racing technology forever. Tragically, the celebration was short-lived for the man who engineered the victory. Just 2 months after the race, on August 17, 1966, Ken Miles was killed while testing the advanced J car prototype, the successor to the Mark II, at Riverside International Raceway. The crash was sudden and catastrophic. The genius whose unwavering focus on safety and durability made the GT40 successful was tragically lost to the relentless, dangerous pursuit of speed. His death cast a long, melancholy shadow over the success of the program. The GT40 remains more than just a car. It is a symbol of a personal feud, the power of industrial might, and the dedication of brilliant, if difficult, individuals like Ken Miles. It represents the moment when America definitively conquered the greatest endurance race in the world, forever changing the lore of the track and etching the name Ford into the very fabric of Le Mans history.